Hey, what's up, y'all? Y'all good? I hope so. Y'all, let's get into episode 5 of season 1 of Savage Beauty. You know that the second season came out on June 28th. So in the first season, we only have episodes 5 and 6 to go over. And y'all get down in the comments and let me know if you have been enjoying these reviews. And that's going to let me know how to gauge whether or not I need to put my energy into reviewing the second season. And everything that I'm saying in this video is in my opinion and it's for entertainment purposes only. And the Copyright Act of 1976, Section 107, gives me fair use of this commentary that I'm about to give y'all. All right. So, Bonga and Z are on the way home because, they just left from watching Dawn take out Kalebe. And she's asleep and she has a nightmare about the night of the fire. And when she wakes up, she can't catch her breath. So she tells Bonga to pull over. Bonga wants, he wants them to go home. But Z says that she needs to go back to the Bingu mansion. Bonga, he really thinks that they should call the police, but Z was like, we can't do that. We don't even have any proof. So Bonga's like, well, if he doesn't know who you are, let's just let it go and go on with our lives. And Z is like, let it go so that they can go on and live happily ever after. Bonga says, our sister is DEAD. She's not coming back. And Z says, well, at least her death won't be in vain. And she tells him to take her back to the mansion. Dawn tells Grace that his man moved Kalebe's body back to his house, and she said that she took care of things on her end. Then he grabs her hand and lays his face on it. Now Grace don't know whether to hug him back or just sit there. So she just sat there because the last time she tried to lean in for a kiss, that man pulled away and got in the bed. Now, out at the pool, Pila is asking Grace if they found Kalebe, and she said that Don found him at his house. And Pila is looking like, okay, well, did he say why he backed out? Don gets out of the pool and says so nonchalantly, he's DEAD. And Pila's like, wait a minute. Can you repeat that for me, please? So they tell him that it was a self-unaliving. They said that he was struggling with the operation for years and he just couldn't handle the pressure. And Pilo says, but we were going to make the case against him disappear. Am I missing something? Grace says, yeah, he took himself out and we took care of the situation. We left a note next to his body vindicating us, a clean slate. And Pilo is just standing there like, my folks are crazy. Now, in the house, Indu is watching a news report that says Kalebe was found unalive in his home, and he storms out to the pool, wants to know how did the man end up unalive if Don said the products were his? Like, why would he write a note saying he's responsible? Don asks if he could just shut up and that he should be happy that his family's name has been cleared. And Indu says, cleared with the loss of someone else's life? Don said, listen, enough is enough. He was not about to be disrespected by some child who doesn't know how the real world works. Pila is pleading with his brother to just let it go, man. Indu says he can't do it anymore. He wants no part of that family. And Pila tries to stop him, but Don says, let him go. He's nothing without the Bingu name. So Indu goes over to Z's cottage to tell her that he's leaving because he can't deal with a bunch of liars anymore. He tells her that Kalebe is deceased. He said that he is leaving and he wants her to come with him. Z says, if you have a problem with your family, you speak. You let them know. You don't run away. He said he had made up his mind and she tells him goodbye and closes the door. Linda calls Pila and tells him that she saw the news, but she wanted to know what happened. He explains, and then Tando walks in and wanted to know what was wrong, and Linda says that Kalebe was going to take the fall for the Yellow Bay scandal, but he got scared at the last minute and unalived himself. Tando feels like that story just sounds off, like it's just very convenient. But of course, the teacher's pet, Linda, doesn't think that her dad would do anything like that because Kalebe was family. And I'm like, girl, he kicked you out the house and you were family. And he sent you away in that little clown car. And you think he wouldn't do something like that? Please, baby, you don't know your dad the way you think you do. Back at the mansion, Indu is packing up his Jeep and Pila is trying to stop him. He's telling him that they can work it out. Indu says, that's what I used to think. So then Pila tries to unpack the Jeep, but they get into a little scuffle because Indu is not playing. He's going to leave. So Pila realizes how serious he is. He gives him a hug and he just let him leave. He just standing in the driveway crying. Later on that night, Grace tells Dawn that everybody bought the story, and then she starts rubbing on him and giving him little kisses. And baby, this time there's some reciprocity, honey. And the next morning, Grace is as happy as a busy bug. Z was looking for her, and she overhears Dawn and Grace out on the patio talking, and then she sees them kissing, which brings back memories of the fire. Grace walks in and tells Z to follow her. She tells her that she disappears every chance she gets, and she wants to know if there was something more important that she had going on. And she wanted to know, where does she go during the press conference? Z says that she gets very anxious in stressful situations, and that causes her to get migraines. Grace told the girl, "We don't pay you for migraines." So Grace says, "You are the face of Being You Beauty, and that's important. And that you just some girl that got the spot. But if you keep losing focus, you're out." So then Z, she is rushing out, and Dawn sees her and says, "You're always in a rush." He asked her if Indu said goodbye before he left. She said yes. And Dawn says, well, at least he was man enough to do that. Then as he's walking off, he rubs her on her hand. And when I tell you, Z was looking like she was about to throw up. But as she thought about it, she was looking like, I probably can use this to my advantage. So she calls Bonga with the idea, and he tells her if she fool with Dawn, he is backing out. He said, "You can't do that." And she was like, "But I think it will work." He said, "If you do that, I'm going to the police and I'm going to tell them that he unalived Kalebe." And she was like, "Fine, you win. I'll find another way." But I think she's going to go through with, trying to seduce this man. Now, over at the Bingu headquarters, Don and Pila, they're in the office, and Don is looking over some paperwork. Pila asks Don about Kalebe, and he says that's over with. And Pila wants to know if the bleaching creams are over with as well. And Don tells him that they will start production up again once all of the attention settles down. Then he tells Pila that he did see his speech at the press conference and that he's starting to get it now. Z has been calling Tando, but she hasn't been answering because you remember Linda told her that she wanted her to stop talking to Z. So Z left a message telling Tando that she missed her and that her and Indu broke up. Well, later on that day, we see that Tando did meet up with Z. Z asked Tando how were her and Linda. She said that they're getting there, but they still feel humiliated by that video. So she asked Tando how did she end up with Dawn, and she said that Dawn always wanted a submissive little wife, but Tando said that was never her. So as they were toasting, Z snaps a picture of them toasting. The next thing we see is Z talking to Don, and she walks into his office. She brings him some brown, which was one of his favorite drinks. And she got a little seductive with him, talking about, "I was having a cocktail, and I know if I was thirsty, you were probably thirsty too." And she leaning in, child. And Don was looking confused, but a little tingly. Then as Z is walking out of the office, Grace walks up and asks her what was she doing in there. And she told her that she took him some brown. And Grace is like, "Well, where's Regina?" And she said, "Well, Regina was busy, so I thought I'd help her." Grace tells her, "Regina is a servant, so let her do it." Now, Tando makes it back home, and Linda asks her how was the sipping paint with Lulu. So that means Tando lied about where she was going, the same way Linda lied about her trying to find out who all was at that Emerald party. And since Z took that picture, I think she's going to send it to Linda, or Linda may find it. I don't know. Over at the mansion, Don is out there practicing his golf putts, and Z comes out and starts stretching her in her tights, showing all her little curves, baby. And Don gets distracted. Then he goes over to her, and I'm like, "Z, you told your brother that you weren't going to try to, seduce this man. What you doing?" So, Don walks over. He tells Z that she has a perfect form. And she turns down her music and she tells him, "What did you say?" And he says it again. And she says, "So do you, but I don't know anything about golf." So Dawn says, "I can teach you." She says, "Right now?" He says, "Yeah, baby. Now, usually when somebody teach you how to putt, they stand behind you." I was like, girl, if Grace walk out that door, all heck gonna break loose. So they do their little practice. Dawn asked her, what happened to her and do. Z says they wanted different things. She wants a family and children, and most young men run when they hear that. Now she is saying and doing all of this to play Dawn. So she tells him that she's going to leave him to his golfing and she'll finish yoga in her cottage. Now as she's walking off, Grace is walking outside and she sees Dawn staring at Z. And while he's staring, baby, he's like, mm. So the next thing we see is Z coming out of the shower, and unbeknownst to her, Grace is sitting in the living room. So Z has to turn her head slightly so that Grace doesn't see the burn on the side of her face. And she asks Z if she liked living there and if anyone ever made her feel uncomfortable. Z says, no ma'am. No ma'am. Nobody made me feel uncomfortable. And Grace tells her if she starts to feel uncomfortable, she should let her know. Well, now everyone is sitting down for dinner. Grace, Dawn, Pila, and Z. Dawn and Z keep glancing at each other and Grace notices. So she asks Pila about one of his friends who is single and she tells him to introduce him to Z. Z says that she's not looking for a boyfriend, but Grace ignores all of that and tells Pila to set up the date for the next day. Dawn chimes in and asks if she knew any other girls, and Grace said it'll do her good to socialize. And speaking of good ideas, Dawn, you and I should renew our vows in like 2 weeks. Dawn says our anniversary is 3 months away. And Pila is joking, talking about, I can't believe you remembered that. So Dawn suggests something small, and Grace was like, the Bingus don't do anything small. And she asks Z to help her with the preparations because she looks at her as a daughter now. I was like, these people crazy. So Linda meets up with one of the girls from the party because, they're trying to find out who could have recorded her at Tando. The friend remembers that V was there and that she was riding solo. Most of the times she was with the girl, but there was a couple of times that V had disappeared. So Linda told the girl to get in touch with V because they needed to talk. Then we see Z going over things, for a photo shoot, and she's on the phone with Bonga. Bonga says he can't sleep because he keeps seeing Dawn, take out Kalebe. Z tells him that her and Dawn are getting closer. Bonga is instantly hot because he told her not to do that. Do not try to seduce that man. But Z says that that's the only thing that they have left that could work. So over at the mansion, Grace sees some of Dawn's clothes laying out and she's calling for Regina to do her servant duties. But Regina, she doesn't hear her. So Grace goes to put the clothes away and she notices that there's a receipt in Dawn's pocket. So she called the number and it was a jeweler and she asked him what did Dawn purchase and he said a bracelet. So Grace, she gets all happy and stuff and tells him that they're renewing their vows soon. But I'm like, baby, I don't think that bracelet is for you, Grace. Now, Z is leaving the photo shoot, but one of Dawn's guys stops her and tells her that Dawn would like to see her. The next scene shows V showing up at the girl's house that Linda had just met up with. Linda comes downstairs and asks her who gave her the password to the Emerald party. She said a friend, but they don't believe her. So, baby, they done locked her in the house and told her that she ain't going nowhere until they get some answers. So now Grace is at home getting a pedicure and she's telling the girl, I think her name is Noni, I think. She's telling her that Dawn, she still think he want a younger wife and that she think he may be messing around again. And she don't like how he be looking at Z. Then her phone rings and it's Justice. She works at the penthouse. Grace wanted to know if Dawn had brought anyone there recently. And Justice, I think it's either a lady or a man, says no. But baby, why in the next scene, that's where Z is entering. And Dawn is sitting there in his robe. It showed up that bracelet he bought. It was not for Grace. It was for Z. So he gives her the bracelet and then he tries to kiss her and she backs up and she was like, what are you doing? Is this what you think of me? I'm not some cheap girl that you can seduce with some diamond bracelet. I've never in my life been so humiliated. Then she starts crying and runs out of the penthouse. But when she closed that door, she grinning. And Don, he just standing up there confused. Now, back over to Linda's friend house, they are threatening V to give them a name. She held on for a minute, but, Linda told her, look, by the time we get through with you, you'll be selling P for peanuts. So she said, if I give you a name, will you leave me alone? Linda told her, yeah, and she might throw in a bonus or two. Now back over at the mansion, Z is sitting by the pool and Grace comes out to ask her what was she wearing on the date with Pila's friend. Well, her phone rings and she turns to answer it. And when Grace turns to answer her phone, Z positions her hand under her chin to show off the bracelet. Grace grabbed that girl by her arm and asked her, are you sleeping with Don? And she said, no, he came on to me. Baby, before you knew it, Grace then pushed the girl in the pool and tried to drown her. Then she told her to pack her things up and get out of her house because she is fired. Bonga is asking his boss if he could connect him to a detective, which I'm like, I don't think you need to be doing that because it say like Don got some power. Now Z is walking to her cottage, but then Dawn pulls up, so she's really putting it on. Now she crying and she tells Dawn that Grace found out and then she tried to drown her. She also told him that she does have feelings for him, but if they were going to be in a relationship, they would have to do it openly and officially. He says, okay, and tells her to follow him in the house. Grace is sitting there telling Pila about Dawn and Z. Dawn walks in and tells Grace that he is gonna marry Z. Peter jumps up and asks him, like, have you lost your mind? Baby, Dawn took that hand and slapped the mess out of Peter and tells him and then Peter, he jumped back at him. He told him, you better never put your hands on me again. And then he looked at Grace and said, I told you I wanted another wife, so deal with it. Grace is devastated. She done got in the shower and she is just crying her polar head off. So the next morning, Grace is acting unbothered. So she tells Z to sit down right next to Dawn. Pila and Z are both looking at each other confused because what is happening here? Well, Bonga is over there talking to a detective and he asked him, what happened to Calvin, who they call Kalebe. The detective said that it was a suicide, but Bonga says, nah, it was a 187 and that he knows who did it. Now back over at the photo shoot, baby, they got Z in this harness all up in the air. She looking cute and everything, but child Grace then pulled up and she nods at the man who's controlling the harness and he starts to make the harness come loose. Everybody starts rushing towards Z and she just stares at Grace, who is staring back at her, about to burn a hole in her. And then Grace just walks off. Child. So now Tando meets up with Z at breakfast. But Z, she's quiet and she tells Tando that Dawn wants to marry her. And Tando is like, why would you do that? Grace will destroy you. And she says, I'm going to tell you something that I've never told anyone about Grace, not even Linda. And this is Tando talking. So Z starts coughing and asks Tando if she could give her some water. And when she walks off, Z turns on her recorder. Child, she recorded Tando saying that Grace and Noni, that is that lady's name, put a drink together that unalived her baby. Now, Pila is in the sitting room with Grace and he asked her if she tried to unalive Z. But then Dawn walks in and calls her a spiteful bee. Grace wanted to know what was he talking about. And that's when Z plays the recording. And Dawn told Grace to get out of his house. He said, you've done some evil things in the past, but that was unacceptable. Peter is just standing there looking lost, like, what is happening? He thought he knew his family, but he's finding out more and more every day that he does not know them folks. Grace chases after Dawn and tells him that he can't get rid of her because of some unborn child. She tried to stop him from walking off and Dawn told her to get your hands off of me. Grace looked at him and says, have you forgotten the things that I know? And Dawn says, have you forgotten the things that I know? So Dawn says, it's time for you to go. Grace says, you can't get rid of me. I made you. Woo! Dawn asks her, do I need to get the police to drag you out? She said, do whatever you have to do. Dawn didn't care about none of that. He said, I don't want you no more. You repulse me. That's hurtful, y'all. Grace stepped closer and let Dawn know that it's not over. And it's a war that he'll never win. Then she walks off and tells Pila to come with her. Dawn says, Pila, you're not going anywhere. Pila gets up in Dawn's face and says, watch me. You'll have to find yourself another puppet CEO. And the whole time, Z is standing back there smiling, but she's proud of this chaos that she causing over there in the Bingu mansion. And that is the end of episode 5 of season 1 of Savage Beauty. Okay. And we're going to roll right on into episode 6. Please like, share, subscribe, and I'll talk to y'all later.